Hi everyone, this is Hmong Unabridged, where we talk and have discussions about what it's like growing up as Hmong in the United States of America. This is Shol, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is your other host, Banya, and I just want to welcome everyone back to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed our first episode, which we talked about some Hmong folklore, and we're going to dive into more stories today. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with our first story. For this story, it is called The Boy and the River Bride. Once upon a time, an orphan boy was walking to the garden. As he passed by a river, he noticed bubbles drifting along the surface, following from upstream. Curious, he decided to follow them. At the end of the bubble trail, he found the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He fell in love at first sight and asked her to marry him. She agreed, but on one condition: he must come live with her beneath the river. So they were married, and for the next 2 years they lived in a hidden world below the waters, surrounded by beauty and luxury. They were happy and deeply in love. But during those 2 years, a great drought plagued the world above. The people cried out in desperation, and their pleas reached the Dragon King, ruler of the skies and rain. The Dragon King came to the boy's wife, who was, in truth, one of the dragon folk, and told her she must return to the sky to bring rain to the people. She could no longer stay hidden in the house beneath the stream. One day, she turned to her husband and said, "I must go above and bring rain to the humans. But please, you must promise not to look up at the sky while I'm gone. No matter what you hear, no matter how long I'm away, promise me." So the boy promised her. But as time passed, curiosity and boredom crept in. He couldn't help himself, so he opened his eyes and he looked up. And above the river, high in the sky, he saw a great, terrible dragon swirling through the clouds. Frightened, he fell to his knees. When his wife returned and saw what he had done, she wept. "You promised," she said. "You looked, and now that you've seen my true form, we can never be together again." In a blink of an eye, the orphan boy was returned to the world above, standing along the river's edge. The entrance to the underwater home was gone. His beautiful wife was lost to him forever, and he never saw her again. The end.
I just don't understand why he would look up. Because he knew that his wife was a mystical being, and because he lived with her for so long underneath the waters, and yet he's like, I'll just go ahead and look up, even though she told me not to. I would never understand.
Well, for Hmong people, dragons are monsters. So I would say, yeah, to us, we kind of see them as mystical beings. But back in the village, right, dragons are like scary monsters, right? They're the one that take away all the brights. You see all of the movies, like those small movies, they're like the bad villain and everything like that. So I can kind of see that, okay, maybe because when I hear the story when we were little, I imagined the bride as like a mermaid. I imagined a mermaid just swimming on the river, right? So I wouldn't have expected her to be like a big giant scary dragon.
Yeah, I can see that, but still, he lived with her, and he should know. But I guess he never saw her in her true
Yeah,
form,
that's what I was thinking too.
and it
Yeah,
scared him.
I would think that because in my child fantasy, right, I would think that she was there just playing, right, in the river, and she actually lived in the sky, like how what the Dragon King was saying, that she has to return to the sky. And so she was just there, half human, half fish, and he didn't question that.
I remembered that she was the daughter of the Dragon King. Was she not?
I don't actually remember. I'm sure there are more to the story, so if anyone who knows the rest of the story or whatever happens in between, please let us know. This is just like a small bit of memory that I remembered from this story. In a far distant part of my memory, now that we're talking about it, I remember him having a wife and he decided to leave his wife for that mermaid. That's why when in the end, when he was kicked out and never see the mermaid again, I was kind of happy because I was like, oh, he deserved it. So I think that's kind of something that I'm slowly remembering, but I don't remember anything else that happened.
So he betrayed his wife and left her
Yeah,
for the dragon
yeah.
girl.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. You shouldn't be treating your wife like that.
Yeah. So I don't even know if he was an orphan boy. Maybe he was just a regular man. And our stories, we have so many orphans. I just think, oh, okay, maybe this one's an orphan too. But again, anyone who knows this story, please let us know what the true story is.
So let me go ahead and start our second story. There were once two brothers who went fishing. The brothers fished all day long, but they were unable to catch anything. Starving and exhausted, they reluctantly packed up and went home. As they were walking down the road to their hut, they met an old man who was carrying a clear bag of small swimming fish. "Hello, sons," said the old man. "Did you catch anything today?" The brothers looked at one another and wearily replied that they had not. The old man dropped 2 small fish into each brother's bucket. "Take these fish home and keep them as pets." The man chuckled and said, "Take good care of them, please." Then he walked away. The brothers looked at the small swimming fish, each fish about the size of a fist, and continued walking home. When they got home, the coals from that morning's breakfast were still warm. The older brother took his fish and threw the little fish into the embers. The younger brother gasped and said to the older brother, "Brother, why did you throw your fish into the embers?" The old man said to keep them as pets. The older brother took a stick and poked his fish out of the embers and back into his bucket of water. The fish had a singed fin and a gill was burnt, but the little fish still swam limply around the bucket. The next day, the brothers left for the fields and spent all day plowing their field and gardening. When night fell, they finally left to go home. As they opened their door into their straw hut, they noticed that the floors were swept, their morning dishes were washed, and fresh hot food was on the table waiting for them. Surprised and thankful, the brothers ate their fill and promised to themselves that they would go and thank the villagers for cleaning their house and cooking. The next morning, they woke up and proceeded to go from door to door, thanking the villagers. The villagers looked at them and scolded them, saying, "Why would we come clean your house and cook for you when we don't even have time for ourselves?" They went home confused and dumbfounded because they didn't know who else would come and clean their house and cook for them. The next day, they left to garden again. That night, when they came home, their house was clean and there was fresh hot food waiting for them once again. So the next day, they went around to thank the villagers once more, and once again, they told the brothers that they did not do it. This happened one more time, and the third time, they decided that they would find out what was going on. So they decided to go visit a wise man in the village. They asked the wise man, "Sir, can you please help us? We have been leaving our home to work in the fields all day, and when we get home, our house is clean, and there is food on our table waiting for us. We have asked the villagers, but no one is claiming these good deeds." The wise man said, "Tomorrow, prepare your packs and pretend as if you are getting ready for the day. Before you go, hide the broom, hide your knives and pots, hide your dishes, walk out your door and hide somewhere." So they went home and got ready for the next day. They hid the broom, the dishes, the knives, the pots. They packed their bags and went to sleep. The next day, they took up their packs, closed the door behind them, and left. Instead of walking away, they quietly sat their bags down. Each brother found a hole in the wall and peeked inside their home. Before long, a bubbling sound could be heard coming from the direction of their room, and 2 young, beautiful women walked into the living area. Both women were beautiful beyond compare, except one of them had a scar on her face and a crippled hand. The 2 women looked at one another, questioning, where was the broom? Where were the dishes? Where were the knives and utensils? At that point, the 2 brothers didn't care anymore and rushed into their house. The older brother clutched the younger woman who did not have a scar on her face and demanded, "What are you doing here? Why are you in our house?" The young woman blushed with embarrassment and said, "Oh, older brother, please let me go. Your wife is over there." And she pointed a finger to the other young woman who had a scar on her face and a crippled hand, for she was the little fish that was thrown into the fire the other night. The older brother let go and walked over to the other young woman. From that day on, the two women married the two brothers. As time went on, each of the brothers' fortunes improved. The two women were able to create thread with their hands and were able to begin a threading business. The younger brother's wife produced strong, sturdy thread that could make strong fabric textiles, and their business flourished. The older brother's wife was able to create thread as well, but her thread would break often. Her fabric was less sturdy, and their business did not do as well as the younger brother and his wife. The older brother began to grow more and more jealous of the younger brother and his fortune. His greed began to overcome his thoughts, and one day he decided to plot against his brother to get rid of him once and for all. "Let's go hunting, brother. It's been a while since we've gone out together," the older brother suggested. "Yes, that sounds like a great idea," replied the younger brother. And so the two brothers made plans to go hunting in the jungle. When that day came, they both said goodbye to their wives and left. Once they got deeper into the jungle, where no one was around, the younger brother climbed a tree to see where they were. He climbed up and up, higher into the tree. The older brother saw this as his opportunity and shot his brother, killing him. He went home and told his sister-in-law that there was an accident and his brother had died. They mourned the brother's death for many weeks, and then the older brother approached his sister-in-law and said to her, "Since my brother is no longer here, I will marry you. I will take care of you from now on." Not wanting to marry the older brother since the sister-in-law knew that he was evil at heart, she replied with, "Thank you, older brother, but my husband just died. Please give me some more time to mourn him. If you would kill and roast a cow, a pig, and a chicken, allow me to eat it all. After I am finished, I will marry you." The older brother excitedly agreed and got to working on killing and roasting a cow, a pig, and a chicken for the sister-in-law. Once he was done, he invited the younger sister-in-law to come and eat. As she ate, she wiped her greasy hands on her clothes. Her clothes became heavy with grease and scraps of meat. After eating, she said to the older brother-in-law and said, "Please, let us go and visit my husband's grave. Let us mourn him one more time." So they made their way to his grave. At the grave of the younger brother, the younger sister-in-law cried out, "Younger brother, come out and take me with you." The ground around his grave opened up, and she jumped in. The older brother tried to grab onto her, but since her clothes were so greasy, his hands could not grasp her. Instead, a piece of her clothing ripped off, and she was swallowed up into the earth. The older brother beat the ground in anguish for losing the sister-in-law. He looked at the piece of cloth in his hand and licked it. He thought. It was delicious, and so he proceeded to eat the rest of the cloth. The end.
Actually, I really do like this story. So, yeah, I always like this story because whenever I think about how the brother took a piece of her cloth and ate it, I imagine eating it myself. And I imagine her piece of cloth tasting like chips, like the Lay's chips.
I actually thought that it tasted like barbecue because it was roasted.
No, to me, I was like, it would never taste like barbecue because it's Hmong people, right? Hmong people don't have barbecue. But if it's like deep fried food with a little bit of salt, then it'll taste like just the original
I guess
Lay's
so if
chips.
it was roasted. It was roasted on a spit. Well, I would imagine it would be roasted on a spit.
Yeah. Other than that, I do feel bad for the sister who almost got eaten. And I always ask myself, what kind of father would, give his two daughters to like random people and turning them into a fish where they don't know whether they should eat them or leave them? Because if I was like someone who was poor, I didn't have anything, and this old man came like, "Don't eat the fish," to me, I would just think that, oh, I don't need to worry too much. I'll just eat it right now, So if it was me, I would have eaten the fish too.
You would have been the older brother.
Yes, I would have been the older brother.
Yeah, but I don't understand why the man would give the two brothers the fish. They didn't seem to be special people. They just seemed like two regular brothers who went fishing. I'm guessing that they are orphans because we don't hear any mentions of their parents or family because they went to the villagers to say thank you instead of saying, "Oh, mom came over to give us food." Or were they just gifted the two mystical or magical fish because they were
I don't
orphans?
know. I know that there is another story where it's not two brothers, but just an orphan boy. And he saved like the Dragon King who was transformed as a snake. So he saved the snake, and then the snake told him to return to that place. So the snake told him to return to that place, and that's where he gave him a fish, right? And so I know that in other stories, like the orphan boy kind of did something to deserve it. But for these two, I was like, why is it so random that he chose these two and not someone else?
I just think that the story ended so funny. It ends with him just saying, dude, this is good, and I really want to know why it ends like that.
Maybe it's like, well, she died. I can't do anything about it now.
Yeah, so if anyone knows, let us know why it ended that way.
Yep. Okay, so I actually have another story, and this one is a little longer than the ones I've told before, and this one is actually a little dark as well. So here we go. So this is titled The Boy Who Waited for 2 Moons. Once upon a time, there lived a young boy. He was a little different from the other children, a sneaky little thing, neither clever nor foolish, but always difficult. His parents told him to eat. He would either starve or devour everything on the table. If they told him to do his chores, he would do the opposite, never predictable, never obedient. One day, his parents were going to the garden. Before leaving, they gave him a simple task. Take care of your baby brother. Feed him, bathe him, and make sure he is super clean when we come home. And so the boy did. He fed his brother and gave him a bath. But as he was drying him off, the boy said to himself, Mother and father told me to make sure he is truly super clean. His outside is clean, but the inside, is still a little dirty. So he took a knife, opened his brother's body, and washed everything inside. When his parents returned and saw what he had done, they were struck with horror. Without hesitation, they cast him out of the house. From that day on, the boy lived alone at the edge of the village. He grew into a man, lazy, spiteful, and cold. He never helped anyone. When people asked for favors, he would snap back, refuse, or say, I'll do it when there are 2 moons. Because there was never a time with 2 moons, no one could ever convince him to lift a finger. Years have passed, and the brother he had once taken was reborn, and in this time he became a wise and noble prince. One day, the prince visited the village and saw how weary and struggling the people were. He asked them, Why do you guys suffer so? And they told him about the lazy man who lived by the edge of town, the man who refused to help, and the man who always said only when there are 2 moons. So the prince went to him. He asked the same. Will you help the villagers work alongside them and bring wealth back to this place? The man, as always, replied, When there are 2 moons, I will help. But the prince, clever and sly in his own way, said, Let us make a deal. When there are 2 moons, you will give your life for having lived in such idleness and cruelty. And the man agreed. That night, the prince led him to the lake. The moon was full in the sky, and its reflection shimmered in the waters below. The prince pointed. Look, he said. Now there are 2 moons, one in the sky, one on the reflection of the lake. And so the lazy man, tricked by his own words, was forced to work for the rest of his life, and the villagers never suffered his cruelty ever again. The end. Do you remember that story?
I remember it now. I had forgotten it. I just got like a blast from the past. And I remember laying in bed and mom telling that story. And I remember just freezing in bed and thinking, oh my goodness, how terrible. Why would mom tell us this story? You know, as little
Yes,
kids.
this story is one of the few stories, because there are a lot of stories that make me feel like, oh, so disgusting, so itchy, right? But this is one of the stories that makes me feel so icky, like as
Yes.
in bad icky.
I just got that feeling while listening to you tell it. What I felt back then as a little girl, I just felt again. And that's when I remembered the story. When you started, I didn't know where you were going with it. And then I was like, no, never mind, never mind. I remember this. It's like you I tried to
Yeah.
like block it out of my memory, but man, that was dark.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in the Hmong words, there's a word that kind of represents this boy, right? So the Hmong word is like, "Ô tử tối nay á."
Oh,
So everything that he does, "Ô tử ni nè, ni chỉ, ô tử ni your villagers, nah. So I don't know if there's like a God word for it. Yeah, so to me, his action of everything, even to when he did that to his brother, is just him, "Ô tử ni your mom and dad, nah." So they'd be like, "Oh, okay, we should never have him, do chores ever again."
I think the word is spite.
Spite. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Spite.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
He disobeyed them to spite his parents, or he he was told to do something, and so to spite them, he did the opposite, or he overdid it.
Yes.
Oh, that poor little
Yes.
boy, the poor baby
I
brother.
know. I every time I imagine it, I'll just when mom left us for the night, I remember sleeping in bed, and I remember I would close my eyes and just think of how painful his brother must be and how scared he must be, because I think he probably he's a baby, an infant, so he's probably just between maybe not more than 2 years
Oh,
old, right? And to me, I was just like, oh, I'm so sad.
yeah.
And it makes me hate the brothers so much.
Yeah, that was a sad one. That was a very dark and very sad story.
Yes.
But what is the life lesson for that story?
Man, I think it reflects a lot of stuff, a lot of villains, you can say, in the world. Like, even now, nothing happened to him. He does what he wanted. No one can do anything to him until he was already like old, until there was someone who was like smarter than him, or someone who was as sly as him to be able to trick him. So it's just kind of like a reality of this world where we see all of these villains out there and all of these people that do such bad things and no one can do anything to them. And it might take like 20 years, 30 years before they get what they deserved. And I feel like he still didn't get what he deserved. In the end, he was just forced to go into labor out of all the
Yeah.
things that he have done.
It's not one of those satisfying stories where you have a happy ending. It's just one of those stories where it's like, well, that's the story. And then that's it. It's not a very happy ending. It's just an ending.
So this story is actually one that I remembered till now. And the reason why is because I actually used this in my life. When we were little, I do admit that I was a little spiteful. I would always try to my mom or my dad. And so whenever I go over the board, I'd be like, maybe I should stop. I wouldn't want to go overboard and maybe hurt someone or harm someone that I love, like this boy who did that just so that his parents would stop telling him what to do. Sometimes I wonder, as we are kids, we have such innocent mindset. And, it's because of these stories that I started getting those negative thinking, the world is such a sad place. People are so evil. And I just like, I wonder what would happen if mom had never told us this story or other scary stories.
Well, there's just so much stories and so many things that we were not protected from. Life just happened, and the stories just happened. The stories that we were told were just kind of a matter of fact. Hey, this is life. Things happen. It wasn't sugar coated, and we weren't told happy stories about like fairies and gumdrops. And it was just kind of like, hey, this is life. This is these stories. Take it.
Yeah, I like, for Hmong people, our stories is so different from like the Western fairy tales. There's always a happy ending, I feel like.
Feel like a lot of the stories from the Brothers Grimm were very dark as well. Like the
Yeah,
Cinderella story and like the cutting of the toes and the heels. And then there's Ariel.
true,
She didn't
true.
have, or not Ariel, but the Little Mermaid, the original Little Mermaid. She
Yes. She
didn't,
turned into bubbles.
yes, she didn't get to marry the
Yes.
prince because the prince betrayed her.
Oh yeah, I guess it's just the Disney fairy tale that we grew up with here that we're so used to.
Yeah, but then a lot of folklore, not just Hmong
Yeah.
folklore, is very dark. But I like to hear these original stories just because, like I said, it's more of like, hey, this is life and things happen. It's not always going to be
Yeah.
happy.
And sometimes I do wonder, like, why do we have such, icky stories? Why do we have such negative stories? But you got to think, back in those days and even now, our life is not a happy ending. There's so many bad things going on in life, and you just got to be wary of people around you and wary of the kind of person that you become if you let your anger, if you let your negativity, if you let that innately violent nature that us humans have, if you just let it go free, you can hurt so many people.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true.
Well, folks, this is the end of our episode today. If you guys have any stories you want to share, please comment below.
Please like, subscribe, and follow us on our social media accounts. We are so glad that you guys are here with us.